started out with this plan of action, like what we wanted to do. We had all the podcasts planned out, and we were like, okay, we're going to record like 4 in a day. And then last night we're at dinner and someone's like, 4 sounds like a lot, guys. And we're like, really? Do you think
we are doing 4 podcasts in one day? We're going to launch this and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And of course, we're feeling a little bit under the weather.
Yeah, of course. We both woke up a little bit and we're like,
Lauren just flew in.
Yeah. Long flight too, like 12-hour flight. And I had a flight fiasco. The guy next to me like nearly died. He has
you have to share that.
I'm just sitting there, okay? And like, he's been pretty respectful of the boundaries. We're 11 hours into the flight. Then all of a sudden, I just feel this body like lean into me. And I was like, bro, this is like crossing my borders. Back up. Then I look over and his eyes are rolled back in his head. He's seizing and he's falling into me. So I'm like, hey, flight attendant. I'm just like trying to get somebody's attention. So all these people run over. They're like, kind of like the movies, like, is there a doctor on board kind of moment.
And this is a 12-hour flight.
Yeah. And we're still
How long was he seizing for?
Oh, it was multiple minutes. And then he just goes unconscious. So what's happening is I'm in the window seat. He's in the middle seat. And he's like falling onto me. So then the flight attendant's like, you need to get up and get out of there because he's just going to like trap you under there. So then I'm trying to crawl over the guy. And then he's just laying there. And the last hour he was like out. But then the funny part was at the end, he kind of wakes up. Then his buddies who are sitting in front, they look at him, they kind of like hit him. They're like, you okay? He like nodded. And then they just like trucked on, like walked through like nothing happened. I even saw my baggage claim. I was like, well, I think some medical attention might have been necessary, but his buddy's like, we're good.
So this was your journey flying in from Istanbul all the way here to Dallas, Texas, where we are recording the very first episode of Unlocked with Rachel and Lauren. And we already had a packed day between, you coming in, seeing a client. You should tell everybody a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So I have 2 kind of primary loves, passion in this life, and that's books and business. And so my early start in my professional career was actually in the health and wellness space, building up a practice that, kind of works very similar to the functional medicine space. And this was kind of way back when. And then in the midst of like my career really taking off, I'm getting tons of clients. I'm seeing them back to back. I don't have time to pee. It's like 8 hours just right in a row. I mean, you've been there. I get this opportunity to do something I've always been passionate about, and that was to write a book. So I got offered to do a book with a company commander in the Iraq War. So I'm like coaching clients by day, and then by night, I'm like transforming into like everything, laying out like camera footage, from Baghdad and, talking about, combat stories and all this kind of thing. And so I released that book and it does really well. And then I start getting asked to write books for like all kinds of really incredible individuals. And so there was a time in which I was balancing both, like a full-time career plus pushing to write. And then after a while, I got the opportunity to actually travel the world. I sold kind of the American dream, the house and the lawn care and the 2 cars and everything, and just went full traveling, lived abroad, many different places, got to meet a lot of world leaders, work with a lot of incredible people in Africa, Middle East, Europe. And then that got me involved in several other types of business, kind of on the global business kind of perspective. And I got to see business from an entirely different point of view. I'd taken it from that kind of American entrepreneurship, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, do things. And then now I'm seeing big business and how it's run, and how it goes along with government and world leaders and all kinds of stuff. So I served on the board of a global company, and that was really an amazing experience, and continued to write. I'm fascinated by highly successful people and people who've been through something really interesting or adversity and what that caused in them. So since then, I'm working on book number 13, actually. And I can't believe it when I say that, actually.
Is that our book?
13 books. Yes, that's our book. Our book is number 13.
Coming soon.
And just been so grateful for all that I've gotten to do and live. And then it's kind of come full circle now, because then I had the opportunity for you and me to actually get to partner in business, and coming full circle back to that health and wellness, which was a love of mine. And so really excited. And we'll, I'm sure, cover a lot more of what that's going to look like. But that's me in a nutshell. Business from every angle, from like young entrepreneur to kind of global holdings company to writing books to traveling the world.
Wow.
A lot we could unpack there, but we'll just keep it there.
It always blows my mind every time I hear like your background and your story. And of course, the listeners don't even know the full extent to your story. But I do know, like, when you and I met, we connected on such a deep level, on a soul level.
Yeah.
We were in an alignment in so many different things between entrepreneurship, your background in global business, my background as an entrepreneur, building one of the top functional medicine nutrition practices here in the United States, having the RSN Institute of Functional Nutrition. So we both connected so much on the business side, and we're like, we are so much alike between our drive, between our go-get nature, between just how we take massive ownership in everything that we do, but also so much of our upbringing and what has really shaped us.
Yes.
And I know those are some of the things that we're going to dive in today, but I really wanted to set the tone for the listeners, you know, to meet Lauren. A lot of you guys may know me and a little bit of my background and seen some of the things that I've done on business, but Lauren, you are seriously like my sister, and you know, she's come in as my life partner. So she's actually stepped into Rachel Scheer Nutrition. She's now a partner in the business, and we're working on a ton of incredible things. I call them really, they're our missions. They're our life purpose on what we're building right now. And so I think, you know, for today in this conversation, I think it's so powerful because, you know, the listeners are getting to hear not just from two very successful women, and I say that also so humbly, but there is truth to that. Your background in global business, my background also in entrepreneurship and what I've built, but I know what we want to really create for the listeners here is really an inside look at, you know, what's really cultivated the mindset that you have, that I have, and really getting beneath the surface of what's really taken you and I to create what we have today and the things that we walked through, and even have the opportunity to interview some of that best and the best in the industry.
That's the whole premise of Unlocked. It's like anyone who has an area of expertise or that's achieved a lot, there was some moment in time, some pivotal moment in which they went through something and something unlocked an understanding, a purpose, a passion. And so that's what I'm so excited about here on this platform, is to have the opportunity to go in and actually see what is the key that unlocked this subject? What made that person who's become this expert? What's the story there? And I've devoted so much of my life to telling stories and to working with people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And there's always this moment. It's not the one that most people see. Yeah. There's some moment in which they unlock the ability to go to extraordinary extent to either achieve something or to understand something or to do something. And I think one of the things that I resonated so much with you is that you have this fire, like this resilience in you. And when we first started working together, I was like, oh my God, there's someone who is ready to put in the type of grit, has that voracious appetite for life and for hard work. And that's why I'm laughing too, is because this is so us, even to plan 4 podcasts in one day. And then we have this conversation with each other. We're like, why did, so it's not just one person. One person was like, wow, that's a lot of podcasts, guys, for one day. And then a second person said like, why would you plan 4 in one day? And we're like, because we can, because we want to.
Because we want to get in as much as we can.
And then we started talking about like, what exactly is that? What's that drive inside of us? And that set off this really interesting conversation that actually we had a whole plan, like for exactly what we were going to talk about, our first podcast episode. And we actually totally threw it out the window. Like this is totally ad lib because of this morning's conversation, in which we were talking about, okay, we plan all 4 of these podcasts, but what makes us, what's the drive to always do more? And there's actually a good side to it. And then there's also a dark side to it. And this is something that a lot of, I think, high achievers have. And that's a kind of a 2-sided coin. Yeah. And we got into it a little bit this morning, but I think that there's a lot more to unpack there.
Look, I get it. You are burnt out with today's healthcare systems and options that are being offered. Maybe you've gone the conventional medicine route and you've gotten basic lab testing done and everything came back as normal, but you still felt like something was truly wrong in your body and you still struggle to get better. This is why I'm so passionate about what we do at Rachel Scheer Nutrition. We are not like a lot of the other functional medicine practices that are out there. We are not a one-size-fits-all program. The system that we developed was actually what I wish that I had when I was struggling with my own health issues, when I was on 5+ medications and I was being told that I needed to have my entire large intestine removed. I saw firsthand what it truly takes to heal. And it's not just extensive labs. Yes, those are important, but truly identifying why we have these problems in the first place, which means we want to get to know you. We want to get to know your lifestyle, your diet, your trauma history, the things that you walked through. We also bring in something called psychophysiology, which is the mind-body connection. And this is what it really means to have a holistic approach when it comes to healing. So if you're sick and tired of the conventional what approach without truly healing, and you're sick and tired of working with functional practitioners or just giving you cookie cutter plans, and you want to learn more about the RSN approach, you can book a free call by visiting rachelsheer.com. We were sitting this morning outside and we're why all this pressure? Let's release some of the pressure and let's allow for some slowness and let's really give ourselves this grace instead of having to just rush in to do all of these episodes. And as we were talking about that, actually this episode came into our awareness about talking about really this entrepreneurial edge that so many people carry who are high achievers, who want to do big things with their life. They want to create, they want to make an impact that sometimes is, it can be a detriment to our health in a lot of ways. But it also is that edge, right? I know you and I can look at what we've created in our life and actually relate back to so much of even our trauma. Yeah. And so that's what I think is really powerful that we want to dive into today is the concept of post-traumatic growth. Yeah. When we have trauma, that it can create a high level of drive.
Oh, yeah.
It can create this high level of resilience. And it's what's led to so many of entrepreneurs and high achievers' success. Yeah. So there's so many positive attributes that can come from it. Yeah. However, there can also be the other side of it as well.
Well, and I've gotten to work with a lot of amazing people, special forces who've gone and seen, active combat, worked with people who, led countries as prime minister, worked with people who, were spies and intelligence agents and people who, objectively, did a lot. And I became very fascinated with what is the catalyst that creates what we call successful people. And there's lots of things out there, let's study their morning routines. Let's look at their habits, and I think all those things are great. I'm very big on habits and how that builds things. But truly what I've seen, and it once I really saw it in other people's life, and then I had to look in the mirror and see it even in my own life, is that every really successful person I know has been through some kind of extraordinary adversity. And sometimes that adversity may be even in the form of trauma. But it's not just that they went through something hard. There's an extra edge to that of they go through something hard, but then they utilize it to actually create this adaptation that forges this capacity for incredible amounts of grit, determination, resilience, and some appetite and ability to want more, to have this internal motivation that's like a fire. It keeps you up at night, wakes you up in the morning. It is relentless. And so that was an interesting thing for me to see. And I've seen it time and time and time again with the people I've worked for and with, but then actually turning the mirror and seeing it in myself too is really interesting. But it was you actually, I think there was a post that you did on social media that brought in the science of it. I would love it if even you would read that out loud. because I had like intuitively experienced it. But then when I read what you wrote, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is actually, there's real science behind what's taking place here.
Yeah. So many of us have heard about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but very rarely do we talk about post-traumatic growth. So I recently shared this post on social media, and the statistic is approximately 50 to 60% of entrepreneurs who face trauma report that it has contributed to their resilience. PTG, or post-traumatic growth, is observed in 40 to 50% of entrepreneurs with trauma histories. And entrepreneurs with trauma are 1.5 to 2 times more likely to take high-risk ventures, and 25 to 35% use creativity as a coping mechanism. So PTG is really the experience of positive changes that occur as a result of trauma. So people who experience PTG tend to see difficulties as opportunities for growth rather than insurmountable obstacles. They can recognize their own strength, creating confidence. This makes them more likely to face future challenges head on, thus building resilience. And PTG can also lead to a profound spiritual enlightenment for a lot of people, and a high level of self-reliance and a greater appreciation for life.
Wow.
And I think that's just, it's so powerful because I think, there's definitely the dark side of trauma. Right. And I know you and I, we really get into that and how that impacts one's identity and their worth and how this can really show up in nervous system dysregulation. Yeah. But there is also this other side too, where I have seen incredibly successful people who are doing amazing things with their life that feel so called to lead different missions that change the world and impact humanity, that also come from very similar upbringings. And it's led to this growth, and it's led to this resilience, and it's led to this greater appreciation for life. I know for myself, I've seen this so much in my own upbringing. And, one thing I've always said is, because I've seen the dark, I'm so grateful for the life. And I just have so much gratitude now, because when I was even struggling so much with my own nervous system issues, my gut issues, and, I really didn't experience, it's hard to even find the words to it, but love. My view of love was really warped as I was a young girl. And so I always had this determination to only really experience love in the purest forms. And it actually created so much gratitude then for the good that was in my life. So because of the dark, I was so grateful for the life. And it took a lot of inner work to be able to get to that place. But I think that can be so true for a lot of people who experience the trauma, but also the edge and the drive that also goes with it.
Oh, it really, I know in my own life that I wouldn't be who I am today had it not been for the experiences that shaped me. And, for me, I was 13 years old when I entered the adult world, and in some ways in a rough baptism into what the adult world is. And I remember this moment when I was about 16, and I was in a situation that no 16-year-old should ever have to face. And I really felt that sense of, this is a sink or swim moment. And it wasn't just myself I was responsible. There was someone much younger than me that I was also responsible for in that moment. And I remember this feeling of just overwhelm, this feeling of, I don't know what to do. And then suddenly I realized no one can do this for me. Nobody is coming to save me. No one's going to come and fix this. And I know now this, like, nobody's coming to save me. I hear a lot of like these hustle culture bros like say this kind of thing.
But I literally just got chills from you saying that just now, because I said the exact words to myself.
Really?
Yes. And you said
we haven't talked about this. We have never talked about this.
No, we haven't talked about this, because I grew up incredibly broke. And for me to want to create a different life for myself, this was actually when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I had this moment of just realizing like, nobody's going to do this work for me. If I want to create a different life for myself, I'm going to have to go all in. I'm going to have to create it for myself. And I literally had that conversation, which I've given a talk before on stage where I said exactly that thing.
I've never heard it.
No.
I can't believe
and
it.
That's like, I was like, wait a
moment.
second, because it's like, it cultivates this intrinsic motivation.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And for me, that's not just this like a nice line, nobody's coming for you. It was so real. It was so gritty. It was so survivalistic and so primal in me to know that this is me. This is all me. And the circumstances, the reasons in which I've been placed in this situation may not be fair, but I just suddenly had this moment of like total responsibility and ownership for every bit of it. Like this trauma, who I am, the situation I'm in, it's all my responsibility now because no one can change. No one can do anything, but it has to come from me. And so I remember this moment in this situation that's a sink or swim moment. And I just remember closing my eyes and it's like a switch flipped on. I felt total focus and I felt a raw grit, a determination, as primal instinct. I will survive. And that.
Remember the exact moment?
Oh, I remember that exact moment. And 16 years old. In a position in which, incredibly difficult. And there was, a lot I was trying to navigate. And I felt like if I don't find the grit in me to push through this moment, and I was in an intense amount of pain, like I have to make it through. And it's not just me. I had others that were even younger and more innocent than me that I felt responsible for at that time. And so I just had this feeling like I'm trying to swim. Someone threw me in the deep end of the swimming pool. No one taught me how to swim. And I'm not just swimming for myself. I'm swimming to try and save others too. And that turned on something inside of me that was so strong. And after that, an incredible determination to build a life, to, grow and to understand it. And I wanted more and more. And what I realized very quickly is, and because I was in the adult life so young, I was always the youngest person in the room. I mean, I've sat in some of the most extraordinary places. I've sat next to former prime ministers and ambassadors and world leaders. And it's sometimes hilarious, mind-blowing for me, but I've always been the youngest in the room. But what I know about myself is that if it comes down to it, I can outlast. I have an inner resilience. I don't care if I bleed or if I hurt. I don't care how long I have to stay up. I know in myself that I can push to that degree. But there's a two-sided coin to this. Like, is this why I've achieved a lot? Yes, absolutely. But that adaptation, it in some ways for a while became almost my identity. That's where I started to see my value and what I could bring to the table.
Value and success and achievement.
Achievement or ability to endure pain. There's a value to that.
Yeah. And that's the edge piece that we're really talking about here, which we can see so many of the things and how it's served you, how it served, so many high achievers and entrepreneurs. And I think often the fear is, if I get rid of this edge, if it goes away, am I going to be able to achieve the outcomes and the things that I want in life? And I've heard that from so many entrepreneurs. So Lauren, I'm so excited to have you a part of Rachel Scheer Nutrition, but what are some of the reasons why you wanted to join the Rachel Scheer Nutrition team?
When I looked at the projections of where functional medicine is expected to go over the next few years, I mean, it's going to skyrocket, as well as telemedicine. So when I got to see, hey, this is an opportunity not just to be on the forefront of a conversation about the paradigm of healthcare changing in our nation today, but also a movement to equip those leaders who will lead the way, I mean, that's an incredibly exciting thing. So I'm excited to see what's ahead because, I mean, honestly, we're just getting started.
I know, we're just getting started, and it's so exciting to see how functional nutrition and functional medicine truly is the healthcare of the future. And I am so excited to see the amount of health coaches and dietitians, nurse practitioners, and nurses who are wanting to get into this field, who are wanting to truly make an impact. They're sick and tired of having only 15 minutes with clients who really don't actually want their advice, and to be able to also create the freedom that they truly want in their life as well, to create the impact and the income. So if you guys are listening to this and you want to learn more about how you can get in on functional nutrition and become certified with your background as a health coach or a practitioner, you can head over to rachelscheer.com/certification and you can learn more about our certification process.
Big things ahead.
Big things ahead.
Especially when people started talking about going on a healing journey.
Yeah.
And have you thought about, therapy, and you should try ayahuasca, and you need to do all this stuff. And there was some irritation. I felt like this like kind of discomfort when people are talking about it. I was like, I don't want to go on a healing journey. I don't want to be this like ultra sensitive person. It's like, guys, I'm so triggered and I'm going to visit my inner child. But what it was because I felt that my ability to have a tough armor was, I did feel like it was my greatest edge. And so I felt that for me to slow down, and some of it was about momentum too. I constantly created momentum in every area of life. And that wasn't just in me, it was in the form of hyper-discipline. I also used exercise, and I wouldn't say I was in some like crazy unhealthy way, but I love to get in there, and I'm the person at the CrossFit gym that's doing pull-ups until my hands are bleeding. And I loved the feeling of getting into that zone of where it's just me against me. And you hear a lot of people utilize this in the motivational world to, utilize this pain, all this kind of stuff. But there came a time in which I realized some of this is unnecessary, and some of it is self-induced. I'm intentionally inducing.
Well, it served you.
Yes, it did.
And I think what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of these traits that they develop are adaptations that they need in order to survive. So for you when you were younger, developing these traits of, I'm going to fight. Nobody else is coming to save me. I'm going to create the life that I know that I deserve, that my kids deserve. Like, that was a very powerful survival mechanism. And I'm also curious, why is it that some people lean into this side?
Yeah.
As this positive, I'm going to create this new life for myself. And we see post-traumatic growth cultivated versus becoming a victim to their circumstances.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because we can see people go either direction where it really impacts their ability to be able to create the life that they want. It creates victimization. And then for some people, it actually creates the edge and the grit and the resilience. And we see both sides of it. And
it's a very interesting question. And I don't know if there's a biological aspect to it, but I do know that from a mental perspective, I think it comes down to, and this is something you and I talked about, if I were to have stayed and felt a victim and felt like I'm waiting for someone to come and make the situation right, I'm waiting for someone to save, it outsources or places the responsibility in someone else's lap. So anyone I have worked with, and for myself, there came a moment of that ultra self-reliance in which you say, maybe this is completely unfair. Maybe I was traumatized. Maybe I have felt powerless, but guess what? The rest of this is my choice and my responsibility. And you and I talked about this too.
We were talking about this in the car yesterday. Yeah. So it's almost like the person who develops a lot of these traits, and we're not saying that there's not negative sides to this because there's two sides to every coin, but develops these traits of drive and an insane work ethic, and then I'm going to create the life that I want for myself. So really what we're talking about is taking radical ownership over your situation, over your life, instead of becoming the victim to your circumstances. So really the difference between the two is saying, instead of, oh, me, like this happened to me, it's actually saying, all right, this happened, but I'm going to be the one to save myself. Just like you said, like I'm going to be the one to create this new life for myself. And it's really interesting. I'd love to eventually get into like the neuroscience, all of this, because it's like what allows each person to lean into each of these different mindsets or frames. I don't really know, but I do know like there is that radical ownership piece that came in. I know that so truly for myself. And actually in my upbringing, I learned to disassociate a lot when I was younger as like a coping mechanism as well with a lot of my trauma. So that was a piece of my adaptation that I developed because I was neglected a lot as a kid. And so that was how I like protected myself. It wasn't a conscious thing. It's just something that I did. So in school, I did really, really bad. I mean, I was in remedial classes actually for a little while. And then as I got into junior high, I was making D's. And there was this time my dad came to me and he's like, Rachel, if you don't get your grades up, I'm going to have to get you a tutor. And, you know, looking back, I actually realized one of the reasons why I was doing so poorly in school is because I was never present. Like literally the class would go on. And if you were to say, Rachel, what did the teacher talk about today? I'd be like, I don't even know. Like I wasn't even there. I wasn't even present because of what was happening, you know, in my home life. But this day my dad came to me and he was like, I'm going to get you a tutor. And because at that age of like being 16 and caring so much about what my peers, I was like, Dad, please don't make me get a tutor. And he goes, all right, Rachel, I'll give you one chance. Get your grades up and I won't have you get a tutor. And this like lit a fire in me. Yeah. One, humiliation is like a huge motivating factor, but it lit this fire in me. And where the average person maybe would study for an hour, I would study for like 5 hours that night. And I developed this insane work ethic. And I remember telling myself at the time, I may not be the smartest person. I may not be the most talented person, but I will bust my ass and I'll work harder than anybody else. Yeah. And I went from making D's to B's to C's. By the time I got in high school, I was actually taking advanced college courses while I was still in high school. And that's what actually allowed me to get into a college like Baylor University.
Incredible.
And this was such a pivotal experience in my life because it developed this work ethic. And I love this story so much because I never relied on talent. I never relied on anything. But I actually carried this belief of, all right, Rachel, you are not the smartest. You are not the most talented. You're going to have to work that much harder. But I was able to prove it to myself that I could by getting the grades and getting into these advanced college courses and getting into a college like Baylor. And I just accepted the fact that I'd have to work way harder than anybody else. And I think that attribute has carried with me. And I think part of that attribute came even far before, you know, growing up as a gymnast and dancer. So I always had this like drive within me. But now it's like as I step into growing my business and entrepreneurship, I'm like, all right, I may not be the most talented. I will never rely on that. Yeah. I will always rely on the fact that I can outwork anybody.
Yeah.
Outlast, and there is the negative side to that too, but it also served me in so many ways.
I so identify with that because I felt the same. I was like, you know what? Whatever it takes, I will be the one to outwork, outlast. And I knew that that grit and resilience would get me through. It's like, maybe I've had setbacks, maybe I've had this or that. And for that season, especially when you're early on, it is what creates this ability to really cultivate so much. But I think as time went on, and here's kind of where we get to that flip side of it, is that there came a point in time in which I created actually a safe environment. I created something that was really beautiful and great. And there came a time when it wasn't just that the only thing I'm bringing to the table is the ability to outwork. I'm actually bringing now a level of expertise, knowledge, just me showing up as me is a valuable asset. But it took time because I so felt like I needed those things for my edge. And so I would find myself over pushing myself in workouts. I would find myself, you know, taking on challenges and trying to get into this mindset, or even creating it. You can even easily isolate and not allow people to help you or be connected or collaborate because you need that no one's coming to save me mentality. So I think the kind of the dark part comes in is when in your reality, you're no longer in that same environment. but then you begin to create it yourself because it's the only way that you think you can get out ahead. It's the only way that you think you have value. And I remember there was a time actually with my husband in which there was something that had gone wrong. Like it was late at night and something needed to be fixed. I grab a coat and before thinking, I'm just running out the front door to fix it, to make it happen. And there's this moment right before I get out the door, he looks at me and he says, I'm here and I would love to take care of this. And I said, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I didn't want to allow this moment. And then he looks me in the eyes and he said, I can't force you right now. And if you feel that you need to do this alone, but I want you to know that there's someone here and maybe you don't have to be alone anymore. And the moment in time when I took off that coat and I hung it back up and I let someone else run out into the dark to fix the problem and to make sure everything was okay. It was something big because in me, and then that's where we become addicted to this idea that that's our edge, that no one's coming to save me, And so we start to actually sabotage people who are trying to collaborate, partner, support, because we don't want to become dependent. We don't want to become reliant. And we start to induce a sense of, that I need to outwork everybody. And it was later in my career that I realized like this seat at the table in my early days, I earned the seat at the table by outworking, outlasting, and just going into grit. And now it transitioned to this time of just, I belong at the table because of who I am. Just being me. But there was a time and I said, I had this big resistance to healing and meeting the inner child and all this kind of thing. But I did have to go back and do some inner work. And what I realized in myself was that I had this vision at some point. I saw myself as that 13-year-old. And then I had a vision of every time I pushed myself to my limits. No sleep, more exercise, more. What I asked of myself. I'd never ask of a sister, of a friend, of my daughter. I would never ask someone. I would never force someone to the level I did myself. And don't get me wrong, there was some great parts to it. I did forge great resilience, but there was times in which I was not kind to myself. And I had a moment, I had to develop some empathy and realize that I never allowed myself the chance to say, because I took it all as my responsibility, I didn't have the chance to stop and say, actually, I didn't deserve that. And I didn't give myself the opportunity to feel any of it because I turned it all into grit and resilience. And it helped, but it was scary at first to even slow down and take a moment to feel some of those things. But I could not develop self-kindness. The reason I was blocked was because the moment I stopped and said, I'm valuable enough and worthy enough to rest, to take good care of myself, to experience pleasure, my value isn't just in my ability to outwork, outlast. It immediately, by nature, I had to feel the moments in which there was trauma had taken place where I had not felt valued or loved. And so there was a barrier there, and it was easy to be a taskmaster with this like whip, just pushing myself. And that felt comfortable, very comfortable, much more comfortable than slowing down and allowing self-kindness in. And it was uncomfortable at first. And I worried I was going to lose my edge. I'm like, but this is my deal. This is why I'm great, is because I can just, press through. So I'm self-inducing it, at a certain point.
Well, what you shared there is so powerful because discipline without self-compassion is really punishment.
Say it again.
Discipline without self-compassion is punishment.
Right.
And I think that's the place that often we'll see a lot of these high achievers, talking about us, entrepreneurs, operating from early on. And this is what I feel like is the journey that I see a lot of people go on, is so they face some kind of adversity in their life. And because of the need to survive, they develop some type of adaptation. And this could be a positive adaptation of I'm going to fight for myself. I'm going to take massive ownership. Nobody's going to come to save me. They develop an insane work ethic and drive, and they're able to get out of the circumstance that they're in. They're able to create a new life for themselves. They're able to create a new level of success, and they look around their life and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so empowering. This is so incredible. Look what I've been able to do. Look who I am. And then they continue to lean into it. And then they build and they go further and they go further. But then after a while, this trait that they cultivated as an adaptation actually starts to hurt them.
Yeah.
And so it's given them so much in their life. It allowed them to create the life that they have, the drive, the work ethic, all of these things. But then they start to notice my health is really starting to suffer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
My relationships maybe are suffering. And they start to see some of the negative impacts in their life. And I feel like this is where normally this awareness piece comes in. And I think actually at this point, even a lot of people aren't very aware that it's actually trauma that's driving them. It's
Right.
kind of like in this unaware place
Yes.
of just drive and go. And they just know that there's someone who can work hard and they have a high level of resilience. But then they start to notice, man, why am I dealing with so much anxiety? Why am I dealing with depression or gut health issues or, nervous system issues? And why am I dealing with insomnia? Or, why do I keep getting into the same relationships over and over again and experiencing and attracting the same people? And one or two things happen. Either this person just completely ignores it and they continue on this path. And, they do create a high level of success in their life, but they burn themselves out in the process. Or there's this big wake up call moment. There's this level of awareness where it is, all right, something's not working anymore. And it allows us to go into this inner journey of healing. And I think also too, this is where a lot of people find the awareness of, oh, wow, a lot of what I've cultivated in these traits actually come from trauma and things that I faced in my life. And this is kind of where that fear comes in. All right, I have awareness that this is an edge that I've had, but I don't want to lose this edge. I want to heal. I don't want to experience the burnout. I don't want to experience the gut issues. I don't want to experience the relationship issues. I want to heal this part, but I also don't want to get rid of this part. And I know you and I have both experienced this in our life, and maybe we should talk a little bit about that. But I feel like this is the journey that a lot of people go on.
I think a lot of people, and for me it was interesting because what I felt like a lot of people, when we think of inner work and healing and all of this, it's almost this total introspection. And then when you come to this recognition that maybe I have developed this based on trauma, it's almost the expectation that now I need to get rid of it. That's no longer who I am anymore. And I kind of differ a little bit in that for me, it's actually about accepting that adaptation I built is actually part of me. I forged that capacity, but it's learning to create a sense of awareness on when and how I utilize that skill that I have inside of me, when I engage it, when I flip the switch. But I now have control to understand that it's not always necessary. And for me, the big telltale sign is when there's an environment that I need to snap in a moment and, the guy next to me is dying on the airplane, or I enter an emergency situation, or I'm dealing with a really high pressure day in business. That's the moment in which I know, hey, I got that switch. We're going to turn it on. And guess what? I didn't stop. I didn't decide that this was somehow a bad trait. This is no longer a part of me because I've done, healing work. But it's the ability to know that, first of all, it's not my only identity. Who I am and my value is not wrapped up in that. And secondly, it's the awareness to sit back and take a moment and say, am I self-creating and self-inducing this because I feel that it's my only edge? Does the environment around me need this? Do I need to go into that deep mode? And it took me time to actually forge a place of productivity that didn't come from that deep grit moment, and actually see that I could embrace being playful. I could embrace actually creating and working from a place that didn't come from like a survival. And it took me time to develop that. And I would say it took also, I think getting older helps some too, and develop more kindness to myself. The ability to say that I am actually incredibly productive when I'm playful and I'm relaxed. And at first, it felt uncomfortable. No, I need to create some really hard workout to induce that feeling inside myself. I need to isolate. I need to do this. And I see this is what happens. And I would say even today, we have a lot of people who are deep into that hustle culture that preach this as a gospel. They're actually teaching others how to create those mechanisms. And by the way, if you're in a tough situation, or even if you're just in a state of total apathy where you're just frozen in life and you don't know how to get momentum, learning how to do those things. I'm going to take my ice bath. I'm going to do my workout. I'm going to create a grit. It can be wonderful. But there's also sometimes when it's not the only way, and it's not always necessary. And so when that becomes your only method of being productive, your only edge, it took me time to cultivate a sense of being able to work from a place that wasn't just pushing myself to the edge, but actually out of creativity, actually out of playfulness, actually out of feeling rested, But it is uncomfortable at first. And it took me actually going all the way back to those pivotal moments and actually extending some kindness to myself that I hadn't. And it was years later before I ever went back and actually allowed myself to feel that okay, that was tough. I allowed myself to feel those situations that I'd never really felt before. And I noticed after accepting all sides of it, there came the ability to forge a new way to be productive. And I still have both, by the way. I still have both. Yeah. I didn't totally get rid of this other. When that switch needs to flip, I can turn it on. But I realized that it's not always necessary. That moment with my husband when he says, you can choose to walk out the door and just do this by yourself, but I want you to know that there's someone here that wants to be next to you and that you're not alone. And I realize at this point now I'm self-creating isolation. No one's coming for me because actually someone did come for me. And they're standing right in front of me. And so I'm going to create a new reality to keep matching my old one. And that's where I think it starts to get really unhealthy is when we begin to self-induce it because we're so attached to it.
Well, I think the biggest shift in what I'm hearing from you and what I know is so true for myself is the traits that you develop, the drive, the work ethic, the resilience, they don't just go away. But your internal operating system and the place in which you are relating to yourself from a place of worthiness or from a place of worthlessness is really what shifts. I know for myself, when I was in a huge hustle point and drive, one, I was fighting for my survival. So there was also the side of I'm fighting for what I know I'm worthy of. But there was also the part that also trauma created, which is that identity piece of I can't enjoy my life until I get to X, Y, and Z. And it's almost like that forever delayed gratification, which is also coming from a place of I'm not worthy to feel good now.
Right.
And I know for myself, as I've done the inner healing work, it's been this internal place in which I've been relating to myself from that has really shifted the most.
Yeah.
So it's not that my drive and my work ethic has gone away. I can still lean into that. And like you said, like I tap into that all the time. It still fuels me in business. It fuels me in creativity. However, I'm also able to then have these conversations with myself, which is actually what like we did this morning with this podcast of saying, all right, I could push. I could make this all happen, but I don't need to. Yeah. And I am worthy of feeling good. And that's a question that I've had to ask myself continuously. What would it look like to feel good right now?
Yeah.
To allow myself to lean into pleasure, to allow myself to lean into play. And I think that's the part that you begin to cultivate as you do some of this healing work.
Absolutely.
I don't lose that part of myself that can work hard, that can drive, that can create absolutely anything. Actually, it's instilled in me this incredible belief in myself that I can create absolutely anything that I want in my life.
Yeah.
But what I create is not something I have to create because I'm trying to prove something to anybody. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody else, and I'm not trying to prove anything to myself. So what does that mean? That means I'm creating now from a place of inspiration.
Absolutely.
I'm creating from a place of purpose, not from a place of lack. So at the core, when we are creating and driving from a place of survival, we are creating from a place of lack. I don't have this in my life. I am lacking right here, right now. I need to get out of where I'm at. And so we're driven by fear. Exactly. We're driven by where I'm at. I don't want to be, and I need to get out of this situation.
And it's powerful.
It is so powerful. Pain is such a powerful motivating force.
You can do a lot.
But there has to be that shift. There has to be that shift.
Absolutely.
Because if you're always driven by pain,
right,
you will never actually experience joy and play or and prosperity and abundance in your life.
You start to seek it out. You start to find, I need pain. I need chaos. I need high pressure.
Though. Yeah. It's like you actually begin to allow yourself to experience play and joy and pleasure.
Yeah.
And be able to lean into these traits that you've developed that are a part of you because they don't just go away.
Yes.
And it's this beautiful dance of like yin and yang. It's like we can go into the masculine energy of work hard to get shit done. And then, I know we can go put on our flowy dresses and we can laugh and we can play and we can, tune
even
into
part of like traveling the world for me was this time in which I really was able to tap into gathering, like you said, inspiration and creating with a sense of wonder. And playfulness. And these are things, and we know now how the brain works. You shut all those down. So you actually shut off, if I'm running from the tiger and I stub my toe, I'm not going to even feel it, right? When you're running from the tiger, you're in that fight or flight mode. You can't taste food and smell things. So you kind of block out what's non-essential. And that gives this incredible sense of clarity in the moment because you can be so singular focused. And you actually lose the feeling that you even need anything else. So it's so empowering because you become disconnected. And so for me, reconnecting and allowing myself just to take time to eat delicious food and really savor it. It sounds crazy and trivial, but it was a moment of sitting there in some beautiful place and saying like, I'm worth this. And there was a time in my life, I'm going to be honest with you, I even used health in these regimens of eating healthy. But I used it as a way to actually deny myself pleasure because it felt better.
Yeah.
It's
the punishment piece, the discipline.
To do this. Yes. And when I first to actually sit down and enjoy something extravagant, to play, to listen to music, to embrace this playful side. And some of these were things that I had shut off because there was a time in my life, I think, and that's part of where if you have endured something as a kid, those carefree days, those playful days, that innocence that you had. For a while, I thought maybe these aspects were lost. And then I realized, no, all of that still is inside me. I just haven't given a place to let it out. And so, for me, it looked like allowing myself to be able to be productive and to create from that different place. And again, some people go on to that journey and then they say, I'm leaving behind the old survival and the old no, all are parts of me. Really all are parts of me. But it does take time. And I would say it feels uncomfortable at first, but there's some telltale signs. I think if you are self-creating it, so if you refuse help and support when it's readily available from healthy sources, and I'm going to do it alone. I'm going to do it by myself. I'm going to take care of everything. You begin the refusal.
Yeah, that overly self-reliance.
Yes. Yeah. If you are inducing or creating situations, and if you notice a pattern in your life where you're like, why is everything at a high pressure point? Or I'm always in a hurry. I don't have a minute to spare. And I realized that at some point, I was like, the last few times people had asked, how are you, Lauren? I'm telling them how, my schedule's packed. I have so much to do. And I'm living in this mindset of I am productive every 5 minutes of my time and all this kind of stuff. And I took a step back and I'm like, but I created all this. I'm the one who designed all this. I've designed a high pressure situation for myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes I'm inducing it just because that's what's comfortable for me.
I think a lot of people don't realize too, when we talk about internal healing, a big part of that is really shifting your identity. Like we talk all about personal development, but it's shifting your identity. And so shifting your identity to a place of worthiness, of I'm worth feeling good, I'm worth this pleasure and all of these things. And that's what I'm like really hearing from you. And I know that's what's so true in my own journey is, so it's like this next level, right? It's like maybe you start to notice like the burnout, or you notice these things that are happening in your life, and you look around and you see, okay, my health is suffering. I have gut issues. I have an autoimmune condition. It's not a coincidence that most type A personalities, perfectionists, high achievers suffer with gut issues.
Oh, I got SIBO, gut health issues, everything starting at like 14. Like,
same. And
tracked right along the trauma.
It's not a coincidence too that, most people who experience trauma in their life have a higher level of developing an autoimmune condition, right? The body keeps the score and everything is interconnected. So, if we look at our health, if we look at our relationships and we say, okay, there's something that's not working, I think that's that first step. It's this massive awareness. And then what comes after that is radical ownership, of taking that ownership over, all right, I need to lean into this and take a deeper look at the ways in which I'm identifying with myself, that relationship with self, view of self-identity. And very often as we peel it back, we see that younger version of ourselves who's still running, who's still scared, who's still operating from a place of lack and fear,
right?
Where her identity or his identity is maybe rooted in a place of I'm not worthy and I'm trying to prove to myself or the world around me that I am worthy. And this is the part that requires healing. And what's so powerful about this is the awareness is a powerful piece of healing. Just having that awareness. And then being able to shift. And it's actually in these small moments. I know for myself, like I used to, and we talked about this before, it was when I was traveling on airplanes. Because I grew up really broke, I would always buy the cheapest plane ticket every single time. And I make great money. And there was this day I bought the cheapest ticket. I was the last person to board the plane. And I was like, Rachel, what are you doing? Like you could do first class. But it was like this moment of I realized where I was operating from scarcity and I was operating from this old mentality.
You were actually in that moment creating the same environment that that was your reality at some point, by the way. But when we begin to create it because it's comfortable and it no longer matches, it's that I've created this, and what trauma does, you do create some adaptation that makes sense for where you're at. The need to disassociate during something painful is amazing mechanism we have to survive. If you get in a car crash and your body doesn't naturally feel pain, that's an incredible thing because your body knows it's too much to handle. So when people experience shock or numbness around something significant, it's actually amazing. But it's when you no longer need that type of adaptation. And I had some of the same kind of things. Like I tell this story that, when we were growing up and, we had a certain budget for the groceries and we'd go, and my mom was amazing because she made a game out of it. She was like, okay, everyone's going to try and guess the total of groceries and we're going to see if we match to what, we can buy. And we'd put the essentials on the cart first at Walmart, and they would do those. And then the non-essentials at the end to see if we had money for it, we could, really afford it. And I remember sitting there and, we had some like block of great value cheddar cheese and we had gotten the big one. And my mom's like, Lauren, run as fast as you can and get the small one. We need to take $2 off of it. And it was like a game to us. Like we're doing these things to, make it stretch, make it last. And my mom made it fun. I can't say that it was even traumatic for me. But as an adult, I saw myself like, I'm buying the smallest pack of razor blades, like, we're trying to kind of make it, month to month, make it last. And again, I'm creating something that doesn't match my current reality anymore because that just feels comfortable, But I think what you said about the identity piece is the most important. And at a certain time, it was reality that my edge in my profession was just the ability to completely outwork and outlast everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But it actually shifted and changed over time, that while that was still a valuable thing I brought to the table was my incredible hard work ethic, eventually I cultivated expertise, knowledge, authority, ability to lead. So I was actually bringing to the table so much more. But if you only rely on the identity that, well, I just have to outwork, it's like you need to run and you can't ever stop the momentum, because you feel like the moment you pause, you feel like everything will catch up to you. You feel like everything you built will crumble. And so I think I see this with a lot of high achievers, whether it's an athlete or an entrepreneur or anyone. They feel that if I don't push every minute of every day and keep going, that somehow I can't outrun everything. And finally I realized, and I came to a point that I realized, it's not just my ability to outrun or outlast. I can be still in the moment. I can just show up as who I am. And that in and of itself has value, And it doesn't detract from the fact that there was a time in which my value really was about outworking. That was the same for you in school.
Well, your value shifted to who you are.
Yes.
Instead of what you do.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's so powerful, because if we look at entrepreneurs and high achievers, right, all of our sense of worth and identity is rooted in the outcome or what we do instead of who we are. So really what you're saying is, at the core, healing is saying I have an inherent worth in who I am, and how I show up and what I bring is enough. And what goes along with that is I'm worthy of feeling good now. And when you truly believe that, you can then lean into like pleasure and rest and slowness. And when you want to, because you got something you believe in, you're passionate about,
turn it on, baby.
You can turn it on.
Turn it on, baby.
You can turn it on, baby. Yeah.
And I find now that I still engage the switch, but now I'm doing it not as I'm running for survival, but
abundance
now,
versus lack.
Yeah. I'm doing it out of a sense of strength, power, determination, fuel. So utilizing the mechanism, utilizing that adaptation, utilizing that ability is something that can continue to give you an incredible edge. And I love to turn it on. I feel good when I turn it on.
I love turning it on.
I love turning it on. That sounded a little vaguely sexual.
Well, no, but I think this is really powerful because people need to hear, because it is a true fear. I've talked to so many entrepreneurs. I don't want to lose my edge. And I would just love to invite you to consider, what if you don't actually lose the edge?
Yeah.
What if instead it's something that is a part of who you are, you can pull from whenever you want to, but also you can experience more joy, more love, more peace, more purpose in your life. Because
and connection with others too. I think it's very
connection.
That's where you lose out love, a lot too. Is you need it's self-induced isolation oftentimes, because you need to get back in that no one's going to save you. I can only rely on myself mentality. And by the way, those of us who feel that way, there was moments in life in which that was reality. We needed to rely just on ourselves. It's why we became strong. But you do lose out on the ability to collaborate and connect with others and to actually forge a capacity of trust. I think one of the biggest things is that when there's a point in which you derive strength from taking something difficult you've been through and then saying, I will utilize this as fuel to become something. But if you're always deriving all your motivation from that, it works for a while. But I don't believe that that's actually a sustainable version of energy for the long haul. It will always eventually, there will be an expiration date. And so that's where a lot of people who, they have something to prove. They want to show the haters. They want to, show everyone what they're made of. So it's still reactive. And actually, you're still giving power to those situations. It's still defining you, even in you pushing off of it and away from it and trying to become the opposite of it. You see people who are like, I'm never going to become like my father. And guess what? Who they're obsessed with their entire life? Their father. Who are they thinking about and they're focused on? And so it is powerful to say, I will survive, and to gain that energy that comes from it. But when we see the body breaking down, when we see people who suddenly feel a sense of they sabotage their own success, or they're burning out suddenly. And this is something that scares a lot of high achievers is, what if I go along and I suddenly burn out? We all hear these stories about someone at the height of their career and then having a mental breakdown, or having a panic attack, or having something that takes place that is finally this red line, and everyone goes, what happened? And for some people it's a relational.
Or we even see the people who get to what they want to create and then they achieve it and they commit.
Yes.
Because they thought that this thing that they literally burned themselves to the ground, their relationships and everything in their life to create, that was going to give them that key to happiness, isn't really what was creating it.
Exactly. And that's where, if it's not where you are reacting, but you actually start to create from a sense of internal purpose, and you start to create from this sense of, this is who I am, this is something I'm doing, and it stops being reactive to something else, stops being about proving anything. It starts just being about who you are. And that's why, and you've heard me before talk a lot about the identity of success, and how important that is, that success isn't some event that takes place. It's a who you are, and it's a becoming process. And in that becoming process, there might be some survival seasons to it, and that might be a powerful thing to kick things off. But eventually, you have to stop self-inducing survival mechanisms as your edge, and learn, and it's uncomfortable at first, but actually learn to create from a different place and sense of purpose.
Pain's often what gets you started, but eventually it can't be what keeps us going.
Oof.
And I think that's really what we're talking about here, is that edge. It's this adaptation that helped us in so many ways. But to get to that next level of what I know you want to create for your life, we got to shift the narrative. We have to shift the identity, and we have to begin to operate from a different place. And everything you were saying, it's shifting that internal place that we're operating from. As you were talking, I thought of the word inspiration, because Wayne Dyer, who's one of my favorite people, he would always say inspiration is operating from being in spirit. So in alignment in the truth of who we are. And when we operate from that place, which is not from a place of lack, not from a place of unworthiness, not from a place of, just like you said, pointing your fingers outward, of trying to prove something to your haters or to your father who never believed in you, but it's operating from this internal place of being in alignment with the truth of who we are and creating from that place. I think that's when we're most in our power. So I loved this episode.
I love the way you said that. It's really, really good. I want to put it on a t-shirt. It's
a good quote.
Should we start an apparel line? Unlocked apparel line.
Unlocked apparel line. All right, so let's dive into the 3 keys, which we'll be doing this on every single episode, which are the 3 keys that have come from what we unlocked today.
Yeah.
So what are 3 mindset shifts that have been the most transformative to you on your journey with cultivating this purpose-driven fulfillment instead of operating from this trauma-driven place?
I think healing from trauma doesn't mean erasing what gave it to you. And it's okay to have a full acceptance of that adaptation that you have, that skill set that is part of you. It's something you can utilize, but it's not your identity. It's not your only sense of worth. And it's not always necessary to engage it. There are many different ways in which you can achieve incredible things. It doesn't always have to come from survival. And so it's just shifting it to see that that's part of me. And it's a part of me that I actually can cultivate a love for, but it's not the entirety of my identity.
So key 1 is this edge is a part of you. It's something that you can lean into anytime you want, but it's not all of you.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful.
Powerful. I'd say key number 2 is I'm worthy of feeling good now.
I love that.
I think as
I love that.
high achievers and entrepreneurs, we are so accustomed to delaying gratification. We're trying to get out of that place of where we're currently at to try to get to that next level, which is that survival adaptation. But it's actually harnessing the belief of, hey, I'm worthy of feeling good now. And it's like we said, saying yes to pleasure, saying yes to enjoyment, to slowness, because we're just worth it.
Yeah, I love that. And I would also say probably a specific key is looking around at your environment and seeing, am I self-inducing something just because I feel the need to recreate an environment that felt comfortable to me? Or am I okay to forge a new way? The way I've always done it isn't the only way. And maybe because of my actions, my environment has changed. And it's okay to look up sometimes and say like, oh, wait a second. I guess it's safe now. Oh, wait a second. I guess I can rest and relax. And so knowing and being aware enough of when you're self-inducing something because it's a comfortable environment, I think that right there, that awareness is a huge key to being able to unlock a different way. That pain drove you here, but it's not always necessary.
Being able to shift the operating system
and
saying this isn't the only way.
Yes.
It's powerful.
Absolutely.
All right. First episode. We did it. We did it. We hope you guys enjoyed our first episode of Unlocked with Rachel and Lauren.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend. We'd love to hear your feedback. Until next time.
Same lock, new keys.